I've had the pleasure of working with all of them for nearly 20 years in one fashion or another. Mike Nunan and I go back to CTV as well with Anthony. Martin Pilchner designed many of the control rooms that I worked out of throughout my career, and Martin Van Dijk has helped to design and redesign some of the most beautiful venues I've ever been to in my life. So I'm hoping that that Michael and Anthony can kind of provide the client side of some of the discussions, and Martin can provide some of the consultant answers to some of these discussions. So as technology has evolved most recently, and this is more on the design side of things, how has a move towards more network-based workflows changed the design of the systems that you guys are integrating for your clients? Things like thermal management, things like electrical availability for control rooms. How has technology implicated these designs? So
the joke I have is there's a very fine line between networking and not working. And if you don't understand networks and computer networks and all that stuff, you will not be working in the future, because a lot of this stuff is IP based. A lot of this stuff is hyper converged, to use the buzzword of the day. Everybody drink. There are many technologies that are moving towards the networks, not away from the networks. And you got to prepare yourself, because, like I say, there's a very fine line between networking and not working.
So how do we get to the whys of moving to things like AES 67 and 2110? Like, is this something that your clients are bringing to you as a request, or is this something that we are moving towards for the sake of adapting the newest technology? Is it something about being more future forward?
Wiring sucks. like who here makes money wiring? There's a lot of people that make money wiring. But wiring sucks. And if you can have flexibility without the cost of wiring, that sounds appealing to me. Does that sound appealing to you? That sounds worthwhile.
There is a consequence.
Go.
Nobody will make up their mind what they want actually these systems to do, and they wait till the end of the projects to actually start deciding what they want to do. And hey, it's just a network. We can configure it whatever way we want. So, one of the things that we had in our history is that we had wires, and you had to think about it ahead of time. You had to plan it, and you had to connect them. Now, that's not the case. Most of the projects, nobody makes a decision till the end of the project, maybe as the doors are opening in a venue, or enterprise is coming into operation. And oh, by the way, the not working experts will come in and, put their latest firmware update into their network, and well, you might as well go home. So, from the point of view of our future, I always look at, the Audio Engineering Society, the leaders of audio and engineering. We've been complacent as a industry for a long time, because we used to lead how we manage signals, how we essentially converted those signals. But now we've adopted basically consumer computer standards and deliver our professional services. So we have some challenges here. And as Mike has talked about, there's a point where you can take it where you can leverage it and take it to a new level, or we can actually just meander on behind it and end up with probably some other industry dictating exactly what our industry will become. And that's not what we want. That's not why we're here.
That actually leads to one of the other. Oh, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Just briefly, that I worked years ago on a documentary about the Via Rail's famous train, the Canadian, that crosses from Vancouver to Toronto. And one of the things I learned then, not having known anything about trains, was that, since the passenger service in Canada has long since stopped owning its own track, they are entirely at the mercy of the freight. So they don't get to decide when they can leave, how fast they can go, and where they can stop. And what they instead choose to do, because they have no control over those three variables, they'll try to manage everything else about the guest experience and try to make it as nice as possible. And I think that's a really interesting analogy here. We used to lay down our own track. We were masters of our own, literally, domain. And now, since we're renting track space from somebody else that comes free because somebody else laid down the network wires, and we're expected to carry on, but we don't get to decide where the stations are, when we leave, how fast we can go, and sometimes other traffic on that rail is more important than we are, and that's where you get to the not work bit.
Well, wire is the oldest form of programming there is. Yeah. So you'd think that, it's just a natural evolution towards packet switching, working for the telephone company. If you want to solve an audio problem, look to the telephone company. They solved it 15, 25 years ago. As we start doing these events and doing these events online, I think that we're going to leverage, like you say, technologies that are adjacent or tangential to the audio industry. But Ethernet isn't finished. Right? So whenever somebody says, well, when is this standard going to be deployable or whatever? Well, it's like, when is Ethernet going to get finished? And it's never finished, and it should never finish. It should always be in the state of open to change. And you're right about commercial versus consumer. They use the word COTS, off the shelf, but a lot of these things, like if you're really taking it seriously, like you want enterprise off the shelf, and that's a different level of service, and that's a different level of reliability that requires a new set of skills.
It's also harder to pronounce.
Yeah, yachts, I call it. Yacht.
But that brings me to a really important variable here, is that we find out that we've got these new fancy toys, and we've got this network-based audio that can connect everything everywhere all at once. But then we find out that, but it's not your network. So whose network is it, and what are some of the things that we need to watch out when running into converged networks?
Well, I think that's one of the drivers behind 2110.
Okay.
Is we're trying to stake our position on that rail to figure out, how we can actually reliably deliver without all of these outside factors that usually cripple our systems. So 2110 has a lot of promise. It has a lot of subclasses. It will be an ever-evolving standard, and it is a standard, not a protocol. So we have to follow it, and you have to learn about it every single day almost if you're going to deploy all of these very extensive networks. And I agree, the rail has been established for us. Now we have to figure out what to do with it and how to do it with all the other teams that are on this rail. And unfortunately, they have a different perspective about people that live on that rail line, about priorities. The fortunate thing is that as technology evolves, and the audio technologies is one of them, the people that actually drive the decisions, the people that are actually paying for it, they're actually very cognizant of the value that this industry and the production industry actually brings to their organizations. So there's enormous promise there in terms of what we need to do, but our future is being able to demonstrate a skill level that these other industries just don't adopt, because they've stagnated themselves. I don't know if you find that. And if we look at the enterprise, I have to deal with some very large enterprise networks like Mike does. And when you really look at it, you find out that there are some incredible people that in the IT industry. They're they're just incredible to be around. But that's not the majority of the industry. They're like every other industry. There's a lot of people that practice and operate in it. But those people that actually understand it, they're quite incredible to be working with.
And the thing they don't understand is what we do.
Exactly.
So the truth of the matter is we're all in the business of education for the rest of our careers. Because when you look at the average dev group now, once upon a time they understood 1 volt peak to peak and they worked at benches with test jigs and stuff, and now they write code. So this guy's last job might have been at an insurance company. He's a SQL expert. It matters not to him that he's working for a media company now. He doesn't actually have any specialty in media. He has a specialty in managing large data sets. He can do magical things with data that I, as a lowly audio guy, I can't even begin to imagine. But he has no ability to understand how he can morph his skill set onto our problems, because he doesn't know anything about our problems. So I find myself most days variably teaching people about what it is we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish so that they can better understand how to bring their skills to the party.
So I have a joke, which is light travels faster than sound, unless it's 2110. Because there are delays and things that people don't know about with 2110. It's not the solution to everything. Like if somebody said, who knows what I say when they say 2110? Who's a SIMT? Any SIMT members here? We got a couple of SIMT. It's a video protocol, blah, blah, blah. We could go into it in great detail. But it's not going to solve every problem, and it shouldn't solve every problem. You know, from computer to projector to screen, you're going to introduce these delays that people don't fully understand as of yet. So it's not the solution to every problem. It's not, you know, I'm not saying networking is the solution to all convenient things. It's just a convenient thing when you scale it up. And if you're doing a small gig like this, would I say, you know what you should do is get some Dante microphones and Dante that computer and that computer back there. It's like, no. Like it's just, it scales up very big in large enterprises, but a lot of these new fandangle technologies don't scale down very well. You know, you're not gonna, like if I need to connect a 2110 projector to a 2110 camera, I need a $25,000 switch in between, or two if you're running -7 redundancy, right? So you're not going to do that, and there's certain economical places
because your boss says, "Wait, I saw Ethernet switches on at Best Buy for $90 yesterday." Like, what are you telling me? $25,000?
Well, you say to your boss, you be the boss, not the engineer. That's my gig.
Well,
yeah, except what if your boss is PNG?
Well, then you say go manage a project somewhere.
well, you mentioned the switches. It's interesting to see the client. Okay, they bought the switches, but then they get the license bills. That's an eye opener.
Yeah, but that's the enterprise grade. You know, like if a great line is 99.999 is like 3 minutes downtime a year, but in 3 minutes you could have 45,000 failures that are a millisecond long that take you 6 minutes to recover. So again, when it comes to reliability and being up, you know, we haven't talked about Martin. Martin's got to come into this conversation because he's a computer expert too, and a networking expert and all that stuff. Like reliability when it comes to being in a studio, like we have such a fear of losing the moment or a fear of losing the broadcast moment that we've kind of had redundancy and backups and reliability and stability in mind for such a long time. And in the corporate environment, sometimes those things, they just don't matter in any way or sense of form. But there's a lot of studios that are getting built and a lot of productions facilities that are starting to become comfortable with this stuff, starting to rely on Dante for convenience, you know, remote controlled microphone preamps. That sounds good to me. A sound card that can have 128 channels of audio and it's a laptop, and it's like, okay, well, that sounds good to me. I think a lot of people are moving their, your laptop there could be your entire studio, your entire plugin library, and you move it to that Dante connection, and it's still there.
Yeah.
So I think that type of mentality is changing how people are doing production.
So what are some of the thresholds for deployment of audio over IP infrastructure these days? Like, is that like small home studio client doing anything and would just rather have, one PoE NIC to their computer, or are they better off staying analog or AES or digital? Or
I want to hear from Second Martin on this one. Martin, are studio builders like is this a thing? Like you talk about?
Is anybody going down that road right now?
Only in terms of the fact that most music now is being made on a laptop, right? So the amount of equipment that's in a typical studio is dramatically less, right?
Yeah.
So you look at an individual studio. What do they need? Need a laptop. Need maybe a decent mic pre, microphones, and then tons of software, right? So even large-scale studios, that's changed quite a bit too, from big giant analog desks to basically, a fancy control surface that makes, the production more convenient.
Has this evolution changed any of your design metrics in how you build a room? Like whether that's thermal management, whether that's I/O, whether that's acoustic dimensions or like target curves that you're shooting for.
Yeah, acoustic dimensions are driven more by the use of the room and the client and what they're expecting to do in the space.
Yeah.
Like you're going to do a hip hop record. Yeah, it doesn't take much to do it, but you need a lot of room in the control room for the entourage.
Cool.
And need to have a giant speaker so they can get blasted with them, right? So that's what that modern studio for that type of music looks like now. But you look at, in terms of how you design it, like we used to have to plan for tons of cable management, tons of room for all the analog patching and things like that. You don't have to think about that anymore. You run so many data lines in, okay, this is actually kind of easy. Right? Heat load off the desk. Okay, not really so much anymore, right? It's all in the
If you're not dealing with enterprise-grade servers, then you also have much less heat than you ever had to evacuate from a standard studio, right?
Yeah. Now you just got that tech desk with those really noisy switches.
Well, right. Then you get into, blade servers and all the rest of it, that now you have to almost probably do more soundproofing for the mechanical room than for the electrical room, yeah.
So
there's also, this is controversial, but no need for technical power anymore. And I say that very cautiously amongst this group of folks. Previously we would have one branch of power on one phase per room, and it would be isolated ground running back to some panel to reduce the noise and the buzz and the shielding and the blah, blah, blah. But now if it's going through Ethernet and it's going over fiber, you can have things that are kilometers apart, different circuits, different supplies. You don't have to worry about a lot of those things. So I think when you're building studios now, if you are going with like an Ethernet-based anything, you don't have to worry about a lot of those things. A lot of people don't realize that like an RJ45 cable, they're not actually electrically connected. They're little transformers in there. Like the first thing you see when you look at a circuit for any of these Ethernet devices, like a switch or any of that stuff, it's like there's little coils in there called transformers. Remember Transformers? Not the movie. It's little coils, isolation. So when you plug an RJ45 into another thing of RJ45, you're not electrically bonding those things. You're bonding those things through induction. And a lot of that changes the way and the philosophy that we design power grids and power systems. And at the corporation, we effectively eliminated the concept of a building ground or, a single grounding point, because everything can float electrically nowadays, where we used to make careers off of system grounding infrastructure, and copper industry has changed. So kind of a controversial thing, but like the need for perfect power is starting to become less important as we start building these networked systems.
I was going to add, that you still need clean power, you still need reliable power. What has changed is the quantity of power,
Yeah.
right? So,
But yeah, there's also another aspect to all of our modern technology. Our systems and components are our own worst enemy in terms of power. We create more harmonics than the rest of the building sometimes with all the equipment and the switches. So now you have another problem that's internal into your own room when you get into large studio spaces and you want that clean power. You still have to have a technical power system to deal with that on the large scale. So absolutely, things have gotten a lot easier on the smaller installations, and we have a lot more leeway. But when you're starting to talk about large systems and control rooms with very professional noise floors in them, then we have to still consider those aspects.
And the pollution, like you say, the noise pollution of like, hey man, check out this dimmable LED tri-light neon rope I got. And it's like, no, like that's the worst thing you could possibly install. Why is my guitar humming? It's like, just shut off your lamp that's right there. And I used to make money doing that, ghost hunting. Just shut off your lamp.
And also at the end of the day, even though we're all digital, we're talking about digital, we're still very analog. And I have demonstrated this with a very expensive meters testing copper cable. And the installer and actually they're a bona fide accredited installer and tester, third-party tester. And you can take their cable and, they talk about copper being able to do 10 gig links. And they've got, $15,000, $20,000 meters to test it. Well, if you take that cable that passed that link and you just go like this, good chance it's not going to fail again on the next test. So at the end of the day, it's pretty analog, everything that we do.
I want to save some time for questions, but the last thing that I've really got for you guys is around AI and whether or not there's a problem that you guys recognize that AI has yet to solve that you're looking forward to seeing it solve in the future.
All of them. Everything that it's solved up till now is a parlor trick.
Yeah.
Our challenge is that if we concern ourselves with our collective professions, as opposed to talking about the product of the things, like I'm not talking about the stuff that we make or that we help our clients make. So leave the music and the media and leave the product out for just a second. But AI hasn't yet and can't yet begin to solve our own problems because there's nothing to train them against. Because our entire industry has been built around shit that people know and things that you can do. I know how to operate the EQ. I know how to do it. There's no evidence of that anywhere unless I happen to have feverishly journaled, for my career. And even then it would be a very peculiarly skinny data set. The point is there's no way to train the AIs yet to begin to tackle the things that we would want them to tackle.
Yeah.
I want AI to generate me more business. and I mean that in like the way of like, every orchestra is a cover band. And what's left? Are we into the performance of things? Is that all that's left for humans now? Like, is the gig I have now to go back to being an artist? And I think that like, where is the business going to come from all of these technologies? I don't understand that yet, and I don't think that's something I have an answer to. But right now, everything is terrifyingly magical, as I like to say, and I'm very excited about these things, and then I'm also like, oh geez, that's terrifying. If you ever go to ChatGPT and say generate me a Martin Pilchner style studio, then I would be kind of worried. Generate me some kind of scripting and command lines to connect this. It's taking away mentorship. So right now people are isolated when it comes to using a lot of these technologies, we're very much like in our own shell with this stuff. So it doesn't make people better connected to mentorships and dealing with industry pros. Like I've been mentored by Martin, Chris, and Michael. Not Martin yet, maybe. I know some of his colleagues' books, and I've read some of those books and been inspired by that stuff. But like that connection to being a good performer and being a good listener to things. I don't think AI is the solution for everything, but it's getting there.
Has anybody from the audience got any questions? Oh, sorry, Martin, first.
I'm just curious, how many people here use ChatGPT or something like that? Or something like that, yeah. So the interesting thing about it, it's an amazing tool. It's pretty awesome. One of the things that we all have to learn is how to speak to these. If you don't know how to ask the question, you'll never get the good answer. And I liken it to, now I'm going to go way back. You know how we use a calculator? Mike had mentioned about using a calculator. Well, there was a slide rule, but no, the original engineering calculators that we got, remember RPN, reverse Polish notation, remember that? Well, it's actually, that's the way you have to talk to the ChatGPT or any of them. You essentially define what it is, and then you apply a logical question to it, rather than like a calculator where you're kind of a string of thought. But if you learn that kind of approach to it, you get amazing answers, and you can really get the tool to work for you. But the original inventors of all of this, they actually are moving on from the AI as we know it. They think it's dead, and they believe that maybe in the 2040s, AI will come alive. In other words, it will be able to think. To Mike's point, how do we correlate this data? We're just keep inputting all of this data, and it's essentially a really super fast database that's correlating and assembling information for us. So if there's one thing that we could take away from this, it is coming, and it's a good idea to be using it and understanding it, but it's not all the answers. And you can look at technology going down in the future. I think we can clearly, all of us have seen, there's two things about the technology. There's how you monetize it and how you help humanity. And it's hard to decide where it's going to go, but that's why it's going to come in as sideways.
And we have at least the possibility to talk about both sides of that equation. If there's a similar gathering like this of I don't know, professional chauffeurs just now, and they're deciding what are we going to do when the autonomous self-driving cars come, they're not going to be able to speak to the other side. They're just going to be out of work. But I think in our community, we have the possibility to pivot. For those of us who have to, and for those of us who kind of live on both sides, concentrate on the thing we know the computer's not going to be able to do.
I want to riff on your calculator thing, because I do think the calculator was a tipping point. There are people before calculators and people after calculators, and there's people before GPT and people after GPT. And I had a colleague who just graduated from U of T 2 years ago, and I said, "You're one of the last purebred engineers. After that, everybody has GPT in their life." So, I'm looking at this panel, and like we all did it the hard way, right? We iterated, we tried, we failed. We didn't have that coach built into our lives, but there will be this tipping point of people who started their career with GPT. To riff on Michael's thing, my kids repair Roombas for $60 an hour now. So, if you got to remember that the robot mechanic of the future is still absolutely needed. And if anybody owns a Roomba, you'll know that they're just awful machines that need so much more maintenance than they actually save you in time. So.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to add a couple points to see we're talking about ChatGPT. Like you say, powerful tool, works amazingly well. I find it as an amazing search engine, right? I need to find a price of construction materials in South Africa. I put into Google, and I get 5 pages of everybody want to sell me that construction material in Toronto. because it's so hard profiling you. So I put that into ChatGPT. All of a sudden, I get the resources that I need to have in South Africa. So it works great for that. The only thing with ChatGPT is it gives you a very confident answer that's not necessarily true. So you can ask them a question. I need a formula for this, thing. It gives you this answer. Here's the formula. I say, yeah, but wait a minute. You're missing this and this. Oh, yes, you're right. Here, let me rewrite that.
I think we all saw
So
the article.
never take the first answer.
I think we all saw the article about New Brunswick being 12 minutes out from
Yes.
from the rest of Canada.
Because it learned it off of
Off the beaver.
satirical.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
you gotta
don't
be able to-
always trust. Still double verify whatever you get from GPT.
Yeah, you have to be discerning with the information. And the other point I want to make, there's a newsfeed article out a day or two ago saying, they compared the brain activity of people who use ChatGPT and those who don't. And the people who rely on ChatGPT, their brain kind of gets a little bit lazy and they stop thinking about things because they're just relying on the AI.
That article was the same article about calculators 35 years ago.
Well, there was an interesting thing that Microsoft did internally within their own staff, and they wanted to know how their staff would use AI. You know what the number one response was? For creativity. A software company, right? They're looking for a computer to tell them how to be creative.
So I yesterday, not joking, is Ike Zimbel here? Where's Ike Zimbel? So 10 o'clock yesterday, the day before, Ike Zimbel sends me a text. Hey, I want to automate my spectrum analyzer with Python. Within an hour, I had a fully operational Python script talking to his spectrum analyzer, doing exactly what he wanted. And I'm like, this is 2025. I'm not going to sit and write 200 lines of code for a friend, but I'll let a machine write 200 lines of code for a friend and take credit for that machine's work. I have found that I would love to write a lot more. I can't get what's in my head out of my head. But if I prompt it well enough, and then I prompt what I prompted, and then I prompt what I prompted on top of what I prompted, and then I feed what I prompted into a different GPT or a different Gemini, and then I riff this one off of this one, I eventually get to the article I'm looking for. And I find that I can release my creative flow with these tools as I iterate upon its own iteration. And sometimes you can use it to just get influenced by things, and I'm like, simply asking it, what am I not thinking about when I ask this? What am I missing here? It's surprising how much you can be inspired by a very simple question like, what am I missing here? And to me and to anyone that uses GPT, like we could do a whole AES thing on GPT and how we're using automation and AI, and we did one, but it was okay, it was good for those who wanted to attend. But we will likely in our next season, Chris will be chair. We'll do a couple of things on AI, and I think it'll play an important role moving forward. So yeah.
So stay tuned for Expo 2026.
One of the things is I think the point to take away from all of this is that it's another tool. It's like you have the Encyclopedia Britannica, for those who know way back when, but you can ask that whole question in a second rather than spending days searching.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would say, designing a studio space, and Martin, you've done this so much, but you have to, at some point, you have to decide what the compromises are. And as far as I'm concerned, we're a long way off from any kind of technology like that making those decisions. And that's what we have to focus on. So to answer the question is, what are you missing? That's the thing that needs to be asked, and understand your value in all of the process. You're the ones that are the arbiters of the whole process. And you always got to ask and really stand back and not take everything verbatim, because that's what will happen. And you have to, life is about compromises in so many ways, especially when you're doing design. So, I don't think that a computer right now today is really going to sort that out. So they're going to do a lot of other things for us, but that's not one of them.
Thanks, Martin. I think we've got a couple of questions coming up from the audience here. Can I just ask you to go to the mics?
Yeah, we can either have people go to the mics.
There's a mic right behind you there, Blair.
And I'll borrow.
They got a stand-up microphone.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Blair.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for putting this on, everybody. This is awesome. I do have a question. Since what we are, in fact, talking about is technically known as large language models and large reasoning models, does anybody else have the fundamental objection that I do, that there, in fact, is no such thing as artificial intelligence, because AI is a marketing term, and what we are dealing with and what is happening when we use large language model or large reasoning model engine is we are creating we're asking, and if you use structured queried language, we're using targeted, clear, concise language to get a response from the LLMs, which is mimicking communication. And how they do that is they scan these databases, and everything's on a database now. If I think about it much, I feel like my head's going to blow up, but I don't want to dwell. Anybody else have an issue with the use of AI?
So you're obviously a seasoned AES member because you're arguing semantics at a meeting here.
There's also no such thing as, what we call 4K is actually UHD. We've just,
it's just a word.
It's a practical surrender, Blair. We realize it's not AI.
It's a 1950s word. It's like they didn't get it right all the time. But yeah, we have umbrella terms for a lot of things, and I don't take issue with it because it's just not. I get nothing out of that conversation. So you just exploit the tool that's in front of you to get the thing you want, whatever you call it. You can call it Fred for all I care. But it doesn't matter what you call it. It's just a tool. It's a workforce if you exploit it well enough. It's a creative engine if you exploit it well enough. It's compute. It's the dream of what computers were supposed to be for. It isn't the first AI winter. As we get into 2040, there will be another AI winter. It's cyclical when it comes to this stuff. And Michael's point about quantum compute and what's to happen after that, we don't know, because in the 80s and 90s when they gave up on AI, I use the term AI. It's a matter of the compute wasn't there to do what we wanted it to do. And we're wasting just copious amounts of energy with AI and using this stuff. And one of the great articles I read was asking GPT with niceties, like saying please and thank you and can you please. It is wasting terawatts of power being nice to the thing. Then I have colleagues who are like, I'm nice to the thing, so when they come to get me, they know I was nice to the GPT. So I think there's a lot of there's more unknowns than knowns, and I think a lot of my teachers who slap my hand for using my fingers or using a calculator are going to slap the hands of people who use these LLMs, machine learning, neural networks. There's 50 different branches of it's like saying audio. Oh, we're talking about audio. No, but what you're talking about is a subsection called wireless microphones and RF and speakers and transducers and stuff like that. But it's still audio. So I think if we look at AI as an umbrella term, just call it audio.
And there's another aspect to the LLMs is, smaller, faster, cheaper. What we'll see in the future, in the next 10 years, there's manufacturers now building chips that contain industry-specific LLM libraries in the chips, kind of like a bootloader. Boots up into the device, and it will have basically a fly-by-wire capabilities in what you do. So you'll start to see that in a lot of the products. I'm waiting for that to see what happens with the consoles. to your point, they're dumb, and now they're, they're interjecting this into right?
That's hope. That's a hopeful future possibility, because it is possible to run these models on-prem. I'm having much more of an interesting time right now learning how to train my own captive LLM from the get-go, and only training it on the corpus of my writing, and seeing how to. So I'm learning. It's one that you have to go to GPT for some things, but the terawatts of power, because you're being pleasant to the thing, not recognizing that you're immediately hashed into an NLP that takes all of those words and throws them out anyways.
That's right.
So it's going to be there, because today you need the cloud. Today you need these hulking great data centers, and you need all of the climate impact and all of the rest of this. You need terawatts of, blah, blah, blah. In the future, it's going to be running inside the console. It's going to run inside the camera. It's going to run inside, and they're all going to talk. There isn't going to be one big HAL 9000 Uber brain. There's going to be a million tiny little. That's literally the Internet of Things manifesting in our world. It's a decentralization, not a centralization of compute. It's everything moving out to the edge, and that's what that will ultimately be the solutionable answer, is that because there's never going to be enough of anything in one place that satisfies everyone's abilities to get everything done.
Liquid cooled consoles. All right, cool. Anybody else? Any more questions?
There's a big side of that is piracy is training the LLM, and that's why it's hallucinating, and that's why it's pirating the hallucinations. That it's like fifth generation thinking, and if you've ever pointed a video camera at a monitor and then pointed a video camera at that monitor and felt that 19th generation beta SP copy, that's what NLP and these LLMs will look like in 10, 15 years. So I think there's a larger conversation there of how do you give credit to those it references? If I build a Martin Pilchner room based on a ChatGTP prompt, how do I give him credit? How do artists get royalties for contributing music phrases, et cetera, or is just copyright broken? And one of the really cool experiments I saw was, and this is related to audio and music, is somebody used programmatically created every melody known to man by brute forcing every melody in an 8-bar phrase, for example. Every note, everything, just iterated it a bajillion times, generated MIDI files, back to our love of MIDI, and then registered it for copyright. So the idea is, every melody possible, every iterative melody possible has now been copyrighted. So copyright's broken. And it does come down to the job for LLM programmers or field experts that'll slowly disappear, because it's going at such a rate now that it's eating its own tail now. It's at such a fast rate that it's eating its own tail. So I don't know but piracy, stealing from people and putting things into it, whether they know it or not. One of the things I think is more important than the piracy thing is security. I worked for a corporation, and the first time I used GPT, they're like, "What is this thing?" And my boss had one bit of advice for me, which is don't put data into it. Just don't put documents into it. And then 6 months later, we had our own internal chat CBC. And you know what they said? Put everything into it. and they took our Confluence pages, they took all of our databases, all of our handwritten manuals, all of our hand curated content, and threw it in. And then 6 months later, they got rid of that, and it's now Google Gemini. And it's because Google Gemini is protected by the overarching licensing agreement we have with Google applications. So I think more important to these things is, you want your ideas to be kept within that LLM, and unless you're paying for it as a utility, AI is a utility, right? I'm paying $20 a month for this feature. The copyright is broken. Who owns what is broken. there are a lot of unknowns that we're going to explore as we get into this, and it's terrifyingly magical.
We'll speak loudly. My big concern.
Well, it's if you ever see they have an AI talking to an AI. Have you ever seen that? Those videos where, and then they switch over to their own secret language, which is more efficient. So it goes back to the lav on the robot. It's like, well, what the hell? Why wouldn't he just like plug into the computer like R2-D2 with his little scomp unit and control the faders on the computer? And that's kind of like the thing I'm finding now is everything is humanoids doing humanoid things, but it's like, no, it's just some boring script running in the background that runs mix show execute.py. That's what I'm really looking for.
Well, or now it's traditional workflows adapting to modern technology and the implications of traditional workflows, like 23 frames per second integrating with video. Every time video does anything to that video,
Totally.
you've got a 30 millisecond consequence added to.
Well, I'm holding a microphone, video camera pointing at me says that guy's holding a microphone. Like,
Yeah.
if a video camera and AI, machine learning, if machine learning can know that person's angry or upset, they can tell if I have a microphone in my hand. So turn that microphone on.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, but sort of the next thing that we need as an input into the system, into our meta systems, and I'm convinced we shall have it, is location awareness.
Totally.
But far down the road, after we knock over a bunch of other stuff that has never been actionable because it's never been measurable, and now we're going to be able to do it with incredible fidelity in real time, is turning your audience's or your operator's emotional state into an input. We are very, very close to being able to measure in real time the emotional state of an audience. I've watched it been done. I watched Dolby Laboratories experiments. They did them in our theater at TED a few years ago, where they're doing real-time gas spectrometry, because it turns out that what you exhale reflects your emotional state in real time. If I show you a jump scare up here, if you react, your next exhalation, the chemical componentry will change. And if we can measure it fast, so I mean, all crazy things like webcam gaze detection, skin reflex, eye response, micromuscular changes. We're going to be able to read the emotional state. We're going to be able to know that the AI just did something because it was reacting to the emergent situation that Anthony was clearly annoyed and angry, and he's talking into microphone 1, so camera 2 should bloody well frame him up like toot sweet.
Security's already using it.
Yeah.
I smell a new game show coming.
Well, but speaking of games, like the video game industry is driving a lot of these things, and the immersive audio thing, I give it a couple of years. I'm just a skeptic when it comes to that stuff.
You only got 2 ears, right?
Well, you only got it's just fancy stereo.
That's fighting word.
That's why I'm over here, Michael.
Hi, sorry, this is way too high for me, but I have a question for Michael. So as someone who makes music and does mixing too and does the songwriting too, I kind of am bugged by the current state of music industry and how, for example, the songwriter might get a little bit of royalties and that's it, but none of the other like profit or the money that comes from, let's say, merchandise sales and stuff like that. As an artist, like I want to be able to distribute that evenly to everybody who has taken part in creating that piece of art or whatever. So my question is, how can we use metadata and Web3 to make that network and make that distribution possible?
You can't.
Wow.
But that's okay. Nobody else can either. The point is that's the promise. You've identified it. You've given voice to it. Yes. If Web 2.0 was about us being able to write, if it created the soapboxes, it created social media, it created the possibility that we can now all generate content. And you as a creator, there's no gatekeeper. You got a Twitter account? Fine. You can be a broadcaster on Periscope. You got a Gmail account? Fine. You've got your own content island on YouTube, and there's no gatekeeper. Build your own pirate ship. Carry on. But we have this ownership problem. So if Web 3.0 realizes its ambition to be about data sovereignty, about ownership, if things like blockchain style technology and math and cryptography, and that might be the first way that we see a practical consequence of the arrival of quantum, is in the creation of quantum encryption for non-quantum compute, but so that we can help accelerate some of this Web3 data sovereignty thing. Because frankly, that's going to also change our senses about data residency and the gravity that data has. Right? We end up remotely editing on something in LA, in a data center in LA, because that's where the film is, and the film has rules that says the footage shall not leave the continental US. So I now have to suffer the fact that the data has its own gravity and it's pulled the compute towards itself. So my edit workstation that I'm editing remotely is actually in California. It has to be, because that's where the stuff is. One of the great promises of 3.0, as you've called out, is ownership, is being able to know that who did what, when, where. And I envision someday the credits rolling at the end of a movie will represent the accounts receivable for those people.
That's
Truly,
that's what I
that's where we're headed. But it's a ways off, and I'm so sorry to say, none of us have a silver bullet to say, here's how you do it tomorrow. But it is definitively coming. It's the only thing that gives us more runway out in front of us. Because otherwise, all we're getting into is a world where the content tap never gets turned off, especially because the machines are creating it faster than the humans can consume it. And nobody owns it, so the hyperscalers get to continually to run roughshod over us and treat us all as sort of indentured servants, just providing data for future training. This only gets solved once we know who owns what, and we're not there yet, but let's hope.
Providence.
And you know, as a creator, digital responsibility of your own material, that's really a place where the music industry doesn't really understand the impact. They, you know, once you put your data out there, okay, you know, yeah, we want to, I don't know, put it in SoundCloud. Well, as soon as you've put it out there, do you think you really own it? That something AI engine is not going to get it somehow? This is the problem with enterprise security. You know, what you see is enterprise goes to, and a corporation expends enormous amounts of resources and money on securing their enterprise. Well, all it takes is one phone camera. Their security is breached. So at the end of the day, you have to own what you do, and until the future allows better protection, you literally have to be conscious of what you're doing with it and where you're putting it. A lot of artists, you know, it's one of the things they use, say, you know, publishing for Apple. Well, Apple is a big corporation, like it or leave it. I mean, they demand a certain way that you produce it and all of that. But if you want to get it out there, they're a big corporation that has things in place to try and protect it. You pay for that. It's not a win-win for everybody. Unfortunately, the artists are on the short end of the stick these days. But there's hope, and there's a maturity there that has to occur in order to leverage. But I would suggest, you know, that you always be conscious of what you're creating and where you're putting it.
I was going to say, sell vinyl. You get paid in dollars when somebody buys a vinyl.
Just to further that one point, if you look at all these main streaming services, I saw some data this morning that 19% of the content uploaded now to these streaming services is AI generated. And there's like one streaming service, I think, out of France or something, Deezer, they're actually now starting to mark AI content on the streaming service.
Yeah,
But no one else is doing that.
Spotify has been at the forefront of that.
Yeah. So they can
Take more money.
Right? Well, that's what's going on. And they're gonna,
Hey, Jess, what role does our federal government have in controlling our copyright laws?
What role does our federal government have in controlling our?
Oh, I'm so sorry. There's only 4 minutes left in this
Yeah.
session, and there's no chance we're going to be able to answer, because you need another hour just to properly state that question. The CRTC is broken.
Yes. Well,
If-
would it fix a lot of the issues if we had better copyright laws in our country?
Well,
No.
look, copyright as a general proposition needs to be raised and rebuilt. And I think that's sort of everywhere in the Western world. It doesn't matter, ultimately, yes, we have to do it here, but it's directly connected to the CRTC and the FCC in the States. And it's all sort of, the overlap in that Venn diagram is outrageous. What's that? Yeah, and it's going to be.
Everybody drink.
And
That's
and
what the
that
buzzword.
mathematic, that cryptographic stance and zero knowledge proofs and a whole bunch of other like super ridiculously geeky thing that makes me very grateful that there are mathematicians in the world, because I ain't one. It is going to, Wayne, it's definitely going to be the answer, but so much else has to emerge and evolve, and before that one little piece can be used as the linchpin in the whole thing. The government's absolutely, I mean, look, our government particularly has an enormous role to play, because all they have to do is be inattentive for a very small number of years, and there won't be a Canadian industry. We will be consumed by, despite the fact that we'll never be the 51st state, guess what? As a media industry, we might bloody well be, because it is only really the defense of the border, essentially, that allows many of us, particularly in the broadcast and broadcast adjacent industries in this country, to still have jobs. So the governments have an enormous role to play, but there's no alternative. There's no possible set of solutions that they could fix the copyright problems now. We have to start. It's going to take a while.
So
And nobody's going to uninvent AI.
If I can add one thing to what Michael's saying, is that while we've got copyright laws for the content that we intend to sell, our privacy laws in Canada have been degraded to the point where all of our information that we don't intend to sell is out there. So forget about the stuff that we're deliberately releasing to the public. Our private information is gone as well. And I remember a late night discussion with Mike Nunan where we were hypothesizing about the possibilities of this becoming a pathway towards a guaranteed income strategy for the country, in the fact that universal basic income. So we all see on the disclaimers about all of these companies that value our privacy. It's not that they want to keep our information private. It's that they're acknowledging that they have established a value for our private information, and they're just openly disclosing that to us before they sell it.
They're stalking you, but what they actually mean is they're putting your data into a pile.
Yeah.
One thing I will add is about this, riffing on the copyright thing, is patents are also broken too. And, I wrote a piece of software, I created a thing. It's like, oh yeah, but I used AI to generate 90% of the code. Am I entitled to that patent? Somebody once told me that a patent is a legal monopoly on something. And is copyright a legal monopoly on your idea and your way of thinking? And it's kind of like, well, what government is going to really help you fight that? I don't even remember a single Canadian copyright thing in the news, or I've never seen anybody in copyright court selling Gordon Lightfoot, I was the sunrise, and you better take care was said by me in a bar in 1974 or something. Like, you don't hear about that in Canada. Like, I don't think that is a thing. So I've never seen any copyright fights in Canada. If anybody can show me towards a copyright fight in Canada, I'd love to hear about it.
Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman recently shut down a
There you go.
tribute band.
They're tribute band, so so you can't even gig on as a cover band anymore, is what you're saying. You know, and but back to the orchestra being a cover band. You know, that's sad.
Well, there were no original members, and they were
Calling themselves.
forming them under the name Guess Who, and they weren't.
Well, did they have a question mark at the end of it? Because if they had the question mark, that's changing it just so much that it doesn't affect the brand. That's what I would have done. We should copyright that. I don't know. Like, I think if you become a publisher, as soon as you're published, it's like copyrighted. That's really what it comes down to. Like, you know, publish your ideas. Web 1.0 was not wrong.
No.
I miss Web 1.0. Everybody get off Facebook, get yourself a WordPress, and publish yourself. Everybody get off X and, you know, connect yourselves with other people who have WordPresses. If you want to publish something, don't publish it on something you don't own. You know, my domain name is my last name.com. I'm sure some of you all Pilchner.com you got to see. So you know, you own that, and you own that like into perpetuity, and you own that copyright. But as soon as you give it up on a platform, the platform owns it. So if you have an idea that you think is valuable and you want it to be, put it on a platform you own, and then share the platform on a different platform. And that's how you can get attention and own what you're publishing.
At the end of the day, I am particularly talking copyright and sort of national policy and patents and all of these issues. We simply can't know, and we can all be impatient about it. But you know, I'm a fan of history, and there's a school of thought that that says that while most people will recognize that sort of World War I was the end of one era of history. There's a school of thought in modern history that suggests that we're still in the transition. World War I didn't end, and then we had World War II. Like the entire 20th century will, in the far future, be seen as one moment of transition, of moving from the old world to a new world which is yet to be discovered. And I feel like we have that same sort of moment with the arrival of the large language models and the predominance of machine learning and this AI era that will not end unless we do, because it's not going to get uninvented, and it may take decades. It's not going to, I mean, the rate of change is enormous, but these are all asymptotic targets. There's simply what's the maximum number of loudspeakers you should use to properly reproduce a three-dimensional visceral sound field?
2.
That's an asymptotic target. As many as you've got, and if you can make them massless and invisible and miniature, Martin would be super happy, and he could build you an ass-kicking room. And some of these things that we're talking about are themselves asymptotic targets, and we're just going to have to live through some really gnarly uncertainty. I'm sorry to say, but it's also going to be pretty exciting, because the uncertainty is going to be because of the arrival of a tool set that will finally let us conclusively fix or posit actual, demonstrable, and actionable solutions to some of these very old problems.
Well, we could let AI police itself.
All hail our robot overlords.
No, don't do that. That'll take up too much power. History does not repeat, but it does rhyme. And I agree with you, Michael, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Dad joke. When it comes down to it, like it's really that this is the calculator all over. This is the slide ruler being invented. These are all cheats for humanity, and this is the biggest cheat for humanity that I could see. But you're right. It's just like one of a series of cheats that we have given ourselves. So, exploit it.
Let's cheat.
Let's cheat. There's the moral of the story. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this discussion. Are there any other questions from the audience before we wrap up? I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you at Expo 2026.